the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour with your hosts, Joe Bond and AJ Applegarth.
Touchdown!
Hi, welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My computer just completely, everything flickered, so I had no idea what was going on there for a second. I apologize. You can hear me though, right, AJ?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. I literally both my screens went black, and I was like, "Uh-oh, what just happened?" Kind of freaked out, and then it came back, and the music was done, and I was like, "Oh, hi." So yeah, welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. This is starting off fantastic. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, AJ Applegarth. What's going on, man?
Not too much. Just got done watching the Phillies sweep the Dodgers, so pretty excited about that.
All right.
But ready to talk football.
Yeah, I was going to say some random.
Man, you guys are off to a great start tonight.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. So yeah, we're doing good. But yeah, let's.
Should I just move forward for you?
Yes.
I don't know. Sure. So yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about the AFC South, and we got two great guests here ready for you to help us out with that. Before we jump into that, though, make sure you hit that subscribe button, those like buttons, leave those comments, those reviews. We appreciate it. And of course, jump over to FantasySixPack.net, become an all-access member. You get access to our draft cheat sheets, our award-winning rankings, our projections. And then during the season, lots of other content, our DFS stuff with Dave Eddy, Chris Robin, and one of our guests tonight. We'll bring him on. Yeah, lots of other things over there. We do all the different sports as well, so lots of action there. And want to mention, go ahead and, if you haven't started your leagues yet, go ahead and start it up on Fantrax. We like their product over there quite a bit. I'll be honest, last year was the first time I'd played fantasy football over there outside of some playoff leagues. And it was a good product. Like, I loved the draft room. It was pretty nice. The color scheme there. And like the fact that you could see like the whole draft board was really, really nice there. And if you're interested in it, and it's becoming more and more popular here, they have a college fantasy football product as well. So, that is a pretty fun one there. I actually want to jump into that myself. I miss out on some of the college football players that come up, and I feel like that's just a really good way to just start learning these players so that when they get drafted, we already know who they are, right? So why not jump in there? And it's totally free over there, fantrax.com/fantasy six-pack to create your leagues over there. So yeah, without further ado, though, let's bring on our guests for tonight, and start with Mr. Bob Lung over here.
No.
Bob Harris. I'm sorry. God, I suck
All right,
tonight.
we're
I'm
continuing.
so sorry.
I'm like Bob Lung, only much better looking. As you know, no worries.
Can we just like start over somehow?
Well, wait a
tonight
minute.
has been terrible.
You think
I
I'm
was thrown
offended
off
by
for a
you
total
calling me
loop.
Bob Lung? I'm offended by the baseball talk to start a show. Did you see the name here? It's football diehard. This baseball talk,
He's
I feel
wearing
like
a
was just
baseball
a
shirt.
the baseball
shirt.
shirt. It's like a blatant assault on my senses,
It's
and
not.
I'm not holding it against you guys. I'm just saying it's not gone unnoticed.
Duly noted. Let me go change. I'll be right back.
Bob Harris. Yes, please do it off camera.
Yes.
Bob Harris. Y'all probably know him more from FF Diehards. He does radio on Sirius XM, FSWA Hall of Fame member, and now you are with Football Guys. How you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm doing fantastic. Looking forward to a nice show. I mean, we were talking a little bit before, but like if we were having this discussion or heading into the show last year, we would have a whole different view of this division. I'm like super excited. There's so many great players and so much fantasy talent to mine in this division. Now it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I remember last year's. It was kind of like, we really have to do this division, and now it's like, okay, cool. Totally different ball game with this one. So, and then returning for another division draft guide here, Keith Fleming does a bunch of DFS work over here for Fantasy Six Pack. Does some stuff with Fantasy and Frames, and has a weekly golf segment for one of the Southwest ESPN radio stations over there. So what's going on tonight, Keith?
Not too much. I was talking about baseball, which I just found out was a big no-no to Bob Harris. It could have been golf or wrestling, Bob, so it could have been worse. Okay.
Look, man, I'm the only one here who's been on your ESPN show, so like I've got that going for me. But yeah, the baseball talk, I think we've exhausted that. It's exhausting.
Yes, it's football season. I'm sorry.
Almost. I'm so ready. This is like the time of year where it's like I can feel it, I can smell it, and it's just I'm so excited because I hate the June, like May part where there's really nothing going on. But now stuff's actually moving. We got the Giants on Hard Knocks, like having conversations I never thought that they would allow to be seen. Really fascinating stuff, though. But I'm excited to talk some AFC South.
All right. Well, why don't we just jump right into that? And we'll start off here with the Colts. And let me pull up my presentation. If my computer will let me, I don't know what is going on tonight.
Three strikes, you're out tonight, Joe.
I know, right? Okay. Yeah.
At least I've only got one against me. Well,
yeah. That's a first.
1.5 if you include the baseball talk
well,
and the
so
shirt.
Here we go. AFC South draft guide here. So we got the Colts, the Texans, the Jags, and the Titans. Starting off here with the man of the hour, Anthony Richardson. This boy is this kid's getting some hype coming into this year. I mean, look, he had 2 really good games. The games that he finished, right? I mean, he was phenomenal. And so you're looking at it here on the screen. It was 21, almost 22 points week 1. Didn't finish the game in week 2, still at 17. Week 4 came back 29, almost 30. Then got hurt week 5 and done for the year. So, I mean, it was very tantalizing what we saw in in that very small sample size. But the risk is there, right? We do know that, small sample sizes, take it with a grain of salt, right? And with the way he plays, is the injury risk too much? Bob, what do you say with Anthony Richardson? You in or are you out?
If he is a nail, I am the hammer. I'm going to hit that 10 of 10 smash all day long. I've been drafting him, probably one of my most rostered players in best ball. For multiple reasons. Number one, if you're going to buy a lottery ticket, you're in the store and you see a bunch of lottery tickets. Oh, this one has a $50,000 grand prize. This one has $200,000. This one is the $1 million grand prize. I'm buying the $1 million ticket, right? So but you can do this because of the depth at quarterback. I can grab Anthony Richardson and take a chance and reach up to the ceiling or at my anticipated ceiling. And honestly, I think we're drafting him at below what my anticipated ceiling is. I don't know if I saw my buddy Lawrence Jackson Jr. over at NBC, had put out, he has him as quarterback 1 overall. I think that's well within the range of possible outcomes. I think the thing that, the reason people were a little bit leery of Richardson last year was because they didn't realize the passing ability, right? They looked at the numbers and not at the film. And I don't look at either. I paid no attention to any of that, but I do talk to people who look at all those things. And one of them was Matt Waldman. And I think it's funny, all the things that Matt Waldman was telling me from the rookie scouting portfolio and Football Guys, telling me about Richardson heading into the draft are the same things the Colts talked about after they drafted him, how they see him as a true passer and a much better passer than the perception. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. And you saw that a little bit. I think Zach Kruger, my other buddy at NBC, had a number out there of the Colts in neutral situations were passing more than running. Now, maybe that's something to do with Jonathan Taylor's situation, but still, they weren't afraid to throw it. And they added more weaponry this year. They believe Anthony Richardson is a passer. Also, he runs. Also, he puts himself at risk. I'm glad he's much bigger than Jaden Daniels. Good luck to you, young man. That 210-pound frame is not gonna take some of those hits that you put yourself up to last year. But I think Richardson, like I hope, right? Like I think if I'm an NFL team, and I jump on the soapbox all the time, so I'll jump on it here. If I'm an NFL team and I'm making an investment in a quarterback who I believe is my quarterback of the future, my franchise quarterback, I'm doing something similar to what Miami did with Tua Tagovailoa. I'm teaching him how to take a hit, how to fall, how to roll, how to absorb punishment. I'm maybe bringing in some MMA fighters or boxers to show them how to roll with blows or miss, or bring in some of the backs over the course of time who have been really adept at not taking big hits, right? There are just those players that you see, they just have that second sense. So they'll just like move a little bit at the last second. Bring in a Tom Brady and have him show him, the phone booth moves, the phone booth jujitsu that he uses to avoid contact as well. I mean, I would be investing in this. But beyond that, I mean, Richardson's upside is huge. Just, the athleticism. We saw it last year. I know it was a small sample size, but basically what I saw last year confirmed what my expectation was for him. I was drafting him heavily last year at a much better price. But I'm happy to draft him at quarterback 5 because that range of quarterback 2s that I can wait well into the double-digit rounds, I feel perfectly fine with a Kirk Cousins, a Matthew Stafford, a Jared Goff, a Aaron Rodgers if I have to, right? Baker Mayfield, any of those guys were going to be available way late in drafts that I could just, count on as a plug and play if something happens to Richardson, or if I totally whiff and my understanding of what Anthony Richardson is not based in reality. I think that is like on the least likely end of the range of possible outcomes, but I'll acknowledge it. We don't know until we see it all on the field. But that narrow sample size last year was more than enough to whet my appetite.
All right, Keith,
anything to add?
Yeah, just that we need to remember this is a Shane Steichen offense. And we know what a healthy season from Anthony Richardson will equate, because you can just go look at what he did with Jalen Hurts, who in his first year starter averaged 21.4 points per game, second year, 25.6. I mean, even his rookie year and the 4 games that he played, he averaged 23.75 points. That's kind of around where Richardson was averaging for his games. And by the way, that game he scored 17 points. He played literally just a half. And I had also forgot that even Justin Herbert, his rookie year with Shane Steichen's OC, averaged 22.9 points per game. So, I mean, Richardson is a better thrower than Jalen Hurts. Like, if from everything that evaluators say, he's a better down the field passer. He's more actually got a stronger arm. And he's got I think the same upside with the rushing. So yes, there's risk obviously because he got injured twice last year, which that's kind of a bummer and only lasted 4 weeks. But if he stays healthy in this Shane Steichen offense, I'd be shocked if he's not a top 5 QB, and it would not be insane at all to think he'd be QB1, because look what Hurts was those first 2 years. And he was pretty limited in what he could do in the passing game and still put up those amount of fantasy points.
I think the thing about Steichen is, he's developed 2 young quarterbacks, Herbert and Hurts, and did it totally different with each guy, right? Like he, for whatever reason, there's probably more to it than just he thought he was a great passer, but Herbert had the most attempts for a rookie, I believe, that year under Steichen. Then Steichen goes and takes a totally different path in Philadelphia. Now he has all that experience and clearly the ability to, to assess the talent and make the best choices. I think it's, this is also a case of the right people in the right place for him.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, so I had the second pick of Scott Fish at the live draft, and AJ was there, and I literally turned around to him and went, "Do I take it? Do I take Richardson?" Because Allen went number 1, and I was like, I went Hurts. I went a little safer. I was like, I feel like Richardson could be like the home run. Like, yeah, he could be the QB1. I get it.
Baseball talk
but
again. Here it goes.
It's also like, is that my strike through? I'll see you guys later. There it is again. But there's also that massive risk with him where he could legit be QB 15 because he constantly gets hurt. He doesn't run as much. Maybe it is what it is, And so that it was kind of like, I've seen Hurts do it twice now, almost 3 times. Like I'm gonna trust that a little more than a guy who played 2.5 games.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's more reasonable in Scott Fishbowl, where the quarterbacks are at a premium. People are going to be chasing them a little bit, and so it's kind of a different game. But there's also an argument that you made that also in that same statement was the home run swing, and there I did it. somewhere Shohei Ohtani is shaking his fist at me.
No, he's making
I
bets.
did it in round 2 and it took
Yeah.
the guy you just dogged in Jaden Daniels. So
Okay, well, but I
went
think
with
that's a
the,
great. Like
That's another home run play. Yeah.
To me, Jaden Daniels
Yeah.
is another guy I'm driving. When I miss Richardson, I'm aiming for Daniels 100%. And like when I go to my Scott Fish Live and I know none of the people, they might be out there. But I mean, Daniels is high on my list given the way I plan to approach the draft. So yeah, I think, but that's the sticking point. And like, you know, there's some people who are more fearful of injury situations. I'm injury agnostic. I do not care. Everybody's going to get hurt. Everybody can get hurt.
I'm hit or miss, and
I think
I'm hit or
like
miss
guy,
with it, and it's
there are people who have chronic injuries that's different than players who are chronically injured. There's a distinction there, right? There's a guy like, oh, he's got a bone-on-bone condition on his knee. It's going to be a problem all the time. Well, probably, yeah, I'm gonna dial back on that until the price is right, and then I'll still not resist. But for players who get hurt, like, you know, if you think about Christian McCaffrey, I mean, like, if we quit drafting him, where would we all be now? Like, oh, he got hurt in Carolina.
Yeah, the 2 years though. It was 2 years in a row. Everybody, you know, fell off of him, and now it's been a huge mistake not to take him the last 2 years. It's number one running back. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well,
So,
speaking of
Jay,
running
say
backs,
peace
let's.
and maybe move on or.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Let's move.
Okay.
Let's go to running backs here, and name dropped Mr. Jonathan Taylor here a little bit ago, but we're just 2 years removed from his RB1 finish in fantasy, and right now he's currently going as the RB5, right around 14th overall, which is right after Jahmyr Gibbs. So, are we sleeping on JT this year? If you know we're thinking he's going to stay healthy. Keith, what do you think about Taylor?
Absolutely. I'm normally someone who does not invest in running backs. Just in general, I like to wait. I don't like to spend a lot on DraftKings if it's not Christian McCaffrey and cash. But having said all that, I think Taylor is an immense value this year where he's going. He's somebody I've targeted in all 3 dynasty leagues I'm in. I've traded for him in one, drafted for him in a startup, and tried to trade him. He's only 25. I know, again, the back-to-back injuries, but Bob just brought it up. What I was going to say literally is CMC, same deal, kind of had 2 kind of fluky injuries. He missed time. It wasn't anything that, you know, looks like it's going to be a long-term serious deal. And because of that, he's only had 1 season of 235 plus rush attempts. So he doesn't have exactly a gazillion miles on his tires. He's averaged 17.5 points per game for his career. Last season in games with a 50% or more snap share, he averaged over 16 points per game. So, I mean, that's kind of, I think, his floor. And then, again, similar to Richardson, I'm going to sound like a broken record when we're talking the Colts. Shane Steichen is a really good play caller and a really good OC, and his teams run the ball very effectively. In 2021, the Eagles had almost 2,000 rushing yards, and that's not including the QBs, 17 rushing touchdowns. 2022, they had 1,900 yards and 19 touchdowns. Again, that's not including Jalen Hurts. And then 2023 for this Colts last year, over 1,700 yards and 12 touchdowns between Taylor and Moss. They're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball effectively. I think Taylor has a very good chance. Like, obviously, CMC to me is RB1. But if it's not a full point PPR league, I would rather have Jonathan Taylor than Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson if it's kind of a more traditional league.
Yeah. Bob, any thoughts on Taylor?
18.2 points a game over the last 5 games he played. It was a little sporadic because he had the thumb issue. That was running back 5. I would probably rather have Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson. But if I ended up with Jonathan Taylor, I'd be perfectly happy. If I end up grabbing a high-end wide receiver in round 1, I come back around real quick and I grab Jonathan Taylor as my running back 1 as well, I'd be perfectly fine. Very happy doing that. And I think, I think everything he said is true. We'll see, something I mentioned, recently, like, think about the decision in the mesh point on RPOs. Like, who you got, Richardson or Jonathan Taylor? I mean, they're going to cause defenses some real tough situations.
Yeah.
That's
where my point was going, but I don't know. Yeah. So that's where my point was going is I know people are probably discounting him because they're sitting there and like, oh, they're worried he's going to take like rushing yards away. How many times have we seen stellar running back play from, on a team that has a good rushing quarterback too? Like, they can go side, they can work side by side like that. It can work perfectly. And in this case, I think it can. We saw him, come back from the injury and it was kind of slow rolling right away. But once they started giving him the workload, like we saw the Jonathan Taylor of old, like it really started to shine. And I liked everything I saw from him last year. And yeah, I mean, everything you guys said was right on. Like it was a lot of the stuff that I was already kind of thinking, just the play calling. This is going to be a fairly run heavy offense. I feel like, Richardson can throw the ball, but we're just going to see a ton of rushing from this team. And Jonathan Taylor is going to eat this year. And yeah, I'm sorry, or not the NFC North preview, but Gibbs going over Jonathan Taylor that's crazy to me. Like I get what he did last year was awesome, but it was a lot of like really big games, but he had a lot of like meh games too. And it was like, I don't know. I'm not doing that yet. When this is Jonathan Taylor's backfield, Gibbs still has to share it. So like the fact that we're taking Gibbs over Jonathan Taylor is just, that's crazy to me. So no,
Gibbs is a best ball guy for me. Like I'm only taking Gibbs over
driving it right now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at again the I'll hop on the Steichen train because as an Eagles fan, I miss him, and he is a phenomenal coach. I mean, if he can get Miles Sanders to put up
1,200, 11 touchdowns,
yards and 11 touchdowns when he's not sharing, or when he was kind of sharing the backfield, for whatever reason, they still loved Kenny Gainwell. Boston Scott was, you threw him in against the Giants because that's what he does, just crushes the Giants. But those two seasons, Sanders in 22 and looking at Taylor last year, or I'm sorry, in his his rookie year, a lot of similarities there, between carries, yards was really close. Sanders had about 100 more on him, and the touchdowns is right there. So I think that's kind of the floor of what we should expect for Taylor is somewhere around what we saw him do in his rookie year, maybe a little better than that, honestly, assuming health. It's just a shame to see him go out with these little ticky-tack injuries when he is a talent. And I will take him over Jahmyr Gibbs every day. I don't care if it's best ball. I don't get that. Monty's still there. He's going to be your goal line threat. It's not Gibbs. So touchdowns are something we can't always predict, but I think in that offense, you can kind of make a case for Montgomery getting the lion's share of them, right on the goal line. So,
and Richardson got injured on a goal line carry, which might make him a little leery, right, of giving him the ball right there.
Exactly.
As much this year.
Yeah. So let's move over here to the receiving core, and little two-part question here. So Michael Pittman, kind of what's the ceiling with him? We know he's the top dog there. He's the number one that everybody wants. What's kind of his ceiling with Richardson, hopefully healthy the full season? And then who's the second guy you're interested here? Josh Downs, Mitchell, the rookie, Alec Pierce, kind of the next three. What's your feeling there? Bob, we'll start with you.
I think we've seen Pittman, pushing towards the wide receiver one. I think he stays in the wide receiver 2 range, is the more likely outcome there. But I think he's still a pretty good value based on current ADP. I'm getting a number of shares of him, and mostly when I don't get Richardson because it's kind of they're close to the same range there anyway. Josh Downs I think is the next man up. I will say AD Mitchell looks like he could be a huge big play threat, and I'll get some late round shares of him in best ball for that reason. More likely to stack him or have him in stacks with Richardson on my underdog teams than I am Pittman, just because of the pricing. I think Alec Pierce is out of the picture.
Yeah. Real quick, so you said you've been taking a lot of Pittman. Like his ADP right now, and I use half PPR. It's right around wide receiver 19. I mean, he's going after Waddle, DJ Moore, right before Stefon Diggs and Cooper Kupp. Like, you moving him up that a little bit in that range, or
I'll be a little more aggressive. I like taking him there. I think he could outproduce that spot. That's kind of my expectation, but I like the pricing, and so I'm happy taking him there.
Sure. All right, Keith.
I just look at Pittman as the guy he's a solid high floor guy, but I don't really like his ceiling. I mean, his points per game have been pretty consistent, 14, 13.5, 15.6. And, the 15.6 came on 156 targets last year, and I just don't see that repeating this year. Like, I see a little bit of regression when you think Taylor's healthy. If Richardson's a QB, you just think that's going to be more rush attempts in general between the two of them. You got Downs in year 2, and then the addition of A.D. Mitchell. Again, I think Pittman's a solid option, and he's the kind of guy that I like building teams and, like standard leagues and stuff for, because you can kind of count on him week in and week out. But in best balls and stuff, I'm a little bit more leery of it, because I don't see, a huge potential because for like a monster season, because the one thing that Richardson really did well in college and flashed was he can really push it down the field. And we know Alec Pierce has not worked out, and that's why they went and got A.D. Mitchell to Bob's point. And I do see some, big breakout games where you see Mitchell have maybe these games where he has like 3 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown or something. That could happen, several times this year.
Yeah. I love Mitchell this year as well as a later target, like Bob said. Downs, I like Downs as well, plus he's got the potential for return yards, which, again, it's got Fish. We obviously talked about earlier, Joe, and I have return yards in one of my leagues that I run as well. So he's someone that I might look at, but I love Pittman where he's going. I think that he can outperform these guys ahead of him. I mean, he could even outperform Stefon Diggs. We'll talk about Houston and Diggs later here, but to me, there's so many mouths to feed there, and here he's one of the top 3 that's going to get fed. So I think the targets are on point. I think he could eclipse 100 receptions this year, and he should easily eclipse 1,000 yards. This projection showing only 5 touchdowns. Okay, whatever, it is what it is for that. Hopefully you get more than that, but with, again, the ground and pound running between AR-15 and Taylor, I'm okay with the 5 to 7 range. I'll buy that. So, all right. Well, speaking of Houston, let's jump on in here and talk about the rookie phenom, Mr. CJ Stroud. He's currently going as QB5 off the board right now, and that's after he was QB9 finishing last year. Seems like the public opinion is thinking that he's going to take another leap forward in his sophomore season. So, Keith, I'll start with you. Do you believe in that as well, or do you think, maybe we're going to see the dreaded sophomore slump with Mr. Stroud?
I don't think it's the sophomore slump. I just think that we're talking fantasy. Stroud is one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen as a rookie. Like, it was remarkable what he did last year, how he didn't turn the ball over. He just kept getting better. But in fantasy, if you're not going to run a lot, good luck being a top 5 QB. I mean, Brock Purdy was top 5 in passing yards and passing touchdowns, and he was QB6 last year. Like, that's kind of the ceiling for quarterbacks. I mean, even like Mahomes last year took a dip. I mean, it's just so hard. So I just think his ADP is nuts. It's a lot like Laporta. Like, I think he's a great player, and it's not anything about, his skill is diminishing this year. I just think from a fantasy standpoint, we've hyped him up to the point where they're extremely overvalued. And I would rather take Jaden Daniels, to Bob's point, 3-4 QBs before where he's going, then take CJ Stroud as, QB5 right now, because you got to think, you got Lamar, you got, Daniels, Allens, Hurts, the Richardsons of the world. Like, those guys, if they're healthy, are going to be kind of the top 5 guys. And then if not, you're battling Mahomes and all these other stud QBs. That's the passing QB that's going to be up there. So I just think that's too much to ask of Stroud, but I do think the Texans are going to be really good. And I think Stroud's, maybe the next, big thing at QB, but from a fantasy perspective, QB5, I think is insane.
All right, Bob.
First of all, I'm not going to let the low-key Jelani Woods slander go unnoticed. Calling you out on that for sure. But let's move forward. I'll get over that. No, I'm just kidding. Keith has it nailed. I mean, he's good. CJ Stroud's a great NFL quarterback, and clearly, coming off an offensive rookie of the year, campaign, that was not for no reason. And the 49ers put a lot of things in place, and they've added on that. They're doubling down on this. I think the thing that was remarkable for me was the offensive line injuries early last year that did not slow him. I mean, he just, he kept going. And even when the pressure was on, he was, man, he's not a running quarterback, but he's mobile enough to avoid some pass rushers. So I'm super impressed with him. I'm impressed with the efforts that they've made to add talent around him in the form of Stefon Diggs, whatever you think of Diggs, and Joe. Even bringing Joe Mixon in, I think is going to be a huge plus as well. So, like if I ended up with him, I'm not buying him where he's priced right now for the same reason Keith's not, but I think he'll have a fine season. And more importantly for me, he will fuel the fires of the pieces we're interested in that passing attack. It should be just fine. And I like the fact that Bobby Slowick didn't move on. It'll be nice to have, that would have made a big difference if we didn't have, maybe had his coordinator switch. I think, same with Detroit. I mean, like some of the coordinators that stayed in place are really good news. I think that was one of them.
All right, Joe, anything on Stroud?
No, I mean, they pretty much, you guys hit it on, hit it right on. He's got to get the passing touchdowns, and as good as he was last year, he still only threw for 23, and that's why he was only QB9. And he gets a few more. He's QB 8, 7. It takes a lot. It takes a lot for a non-rushing quarterback to really move up the ranks in fantasy, and it's just there's more and more running quarterbacks coming, in the league, especially this year, and so. We got Kyler Murray coming back off injury, hopefully getting a full season too. That's another guy that you could potentially pass him. It's tough. It really is. And I know people are super excited with the addition of Stefon Diggs. And, it's just, it's almost like he surprised everybody last year. And I am slightly worried that people are going to be like, oh, well, now we have to actually respect him. Like we know he can do it for a full year, we've seen it before, but I mean, I think he'll be fine. It's just, the upside to QB1, not quite there.
Yeah, I'm probably passing on Stroud in most places. I just don't think I'm going to afford him, and someone else is going to jump on him. So, all right, what do we got for receivers?
Here to the receivers that we've talked about, and who's the best one, right? Stefon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Got all three here with the fantasy six-pack projections. It's a close race between Diggs and Collins. It really is. I think Tank Dell is clearly the number 3 as far as overall season. Tell me if you think I'm wrong there, but it's a very tight race between Diggs and Nico Collins here. Bob, who do you have as your number 1 in this offense?
I believe there are 72 million reasons to think it's Nico Collins, and that would be the extension he signed. They paid him to be the alpha, right? I mean, that's where we're at, and we'll see. Coming off career best, 80 catches, 1,297 yards, 8 touchdowns. That was tied for inside the top 10 in 15 games. I'd like to see him stay healthy, but I think to me he's I'm comfortable taking him. Not comfortable. He's a little expensive for me, but I'd rather take him than Diggs, and I'd probably rather take Dell than both of them, just based on pricing. But if in a vacuum, if I'm sitting here in a redraft league and I'm worried about getting one guy in this offense, it's probably going to be Nico Collins. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about the other pieces, but the established connection with Stroud, I think, works in his favor. Diggs comes in and Diggs. What we saw down the stretch last year, 43 yards, receiving yards a game for Diggs in Buffalo, right? That 10-game stretch was horrible. Didn't have 1 touchdown, no 100-yard games. I mean, I think we're going to look back at that and maybe we say, oh, that was just a little blip on Stefon Diggs' otherwise super illustrious career. And going forward might be part of that. But he seems like a rental in Houston, just a piece to get them by. And I think maybe they'll treat him like that, where they're the two guys they have under contract for the long term are Collins and Dell. I think that's going to be the focal. Those two will be the focal point.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think Diggs is a nice add, but with all of the different talented players in here, it's hard. It's hard for everybody to get a piece of the pie and really be able to flourish here. I had Collins all over the place last year late and loved it.
Helps. Yeah, I was gonna say that helps.
Yeah, it was.
I got him,
especially
it
in
was fantastic.
A couple of my keeper leagues.
I think you look at Diggs. He averaged 161 targets a year in Buffalo. Is he going to get 9 targets a game with the pieces there? If we throw in Schultz and throw in Mixon, I mean, I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, maybe it happens, but I think that's one of the reasons he's not in Buffalo anymore, is because he demands those targets, and we'll see how that works out in Houston,
It's
where
my concern.
maybe Houston doesn't feel like he deserves those targets. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I mean, the good news, he's got to be on his best behavior, because as Bob was saying, he's a rental. Like, that's the one thing where I understand what the Texans did, because he's got to behave because he wants to get paid, I'm sure.
100%.
Yeah, that's just it. And, but then once he does get paid, what happens then? Is he still here in Houston? Are they going to pay him too? I don't know if they're going to have three high-priced receivers. So he'll be moving somewhere. But let's go ahead and talk about Mr. Joe Mixon here. He was also a new face in this locker room this year. He was traded for and then given an extension with the Texans. So he's making more money now too. All signs point to him being the lead back for this offense, but he's actually only going as RB15 right now. So about 48th overall. So right at the end of the 4th round. Do we think the public opinion is too low on Mixon this year, Keith?
Hell yeah. The public opinion, like, this is the things I don't understand, is everybody seems to be so high on this Texans offense, to where I think Stroud is overvalued. I really think that in some ways Collins and Diggs are overvalued. I do kind of like where Dell's at. Well, they're going to obviously have a running back. We saw what Singletary did last year, who I think Mixon is a better running back than Devin Singletary. We saw what Dameon Pierce did the year before without, Stroud in this, similar offense. I think Mixon's going to be great. I mean, he's been in points per game, the worst 11th the last 3 years. And I know everybody's moaned and groaned about him because he's kind of a plotter and he's not the sexiest guy. But the big thing is he catches so many freaking passes too, like at least 40 receptions each of the last 3 seasons, at least 35, I think, in like 5 out of the last 6. And he's somebody that historically has gotten the ball a lot in the red zone. And if that's the case, like, it would not shock me if Mixon's like a top 5-6 running back at the end of this year, if this Texans offense is as good as everybody thinks. And this is exactly why I typically wait on running backs in drafts, is because you can get a Joe Mixon. I really like Zamir White this year. Like, there's running backs that I think you're going to get a ton of touches and you can wait on them. I mean, running back 15 to me is kind of insane. Yeah.
Bob?
Volume matters, right? For me,
Yep.
That's the cheat code for running backs, and but also Mixon has, Keith said it, since 2017, 7th most receptions, 7th most receiving yards among all running backs, 4th most rushing yards, 7th most rushing touchdowns, got 49 of those. I mean, like, he's coming off his 4,000-yard rushing campaign in 7 seasons. It's been great. And the one thing he has not done well is breakaway runs. My buddy at Football Guys, Zeri Kansabedian, he had the worst breakaway run percentage among the top 12 backs since 2020. Okay. Also, Tristan Cockcroft noted from ESPN, Mixon has scored at least 75 of his PPR fantasy points inside the red zone in each of the last 3 seasons. He's got 34 attempts and 17 touchdowns on goal line carries. I mean, there's just a lot to like here, and the volume that goes with all that is a good selling point for me.
Yeah. Joe?
Apparently, I didn't need to do any research for this show, because literally, like, everything I had written down, you guys just said. So, like, yeah, it was all red zone stuff. Like, I know he's massive in the red zone, and, like, we love this offense. Keith, you just said that too, right? They're going to move the ball. He's going to get a ton of red zone work, and that's where he flourishes. So I like him right now. You know, the early projections have him right around 15. My rankings kind of fell that way, but like there's going to be a lot of tweaking. I guarantee he's moving up. Like there's just no way he sits back there. And I think the public's going to, kind of buy in on him too. Because you're right, Keith. He's boring, right? He's just kind of like, he doesn't do it all. He doesn't do a whole lot. And then boom, he scores 2 touchdowns. And you're like, oh, all right. But that's what he does. So who cares? Yep. It works all the time. So let's just keep it going. So
I don't know. The neighborhood patrol in his area would disagree with you that he's boring.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Yikes. All right, so that's it for the Houston Texans. Let's jump over here to the Jacksonville Jaguars and start here with Mr. Trevor Lawrence. And
sunshine.
What a wild ride it's been for Trevor Lawrence. His rookie season, let's just forget about that one. Then he had, 2 really solid years in a row, and then last year was kind of like, what happened? Like it was just bizarre, and he got hurt, and it was all over the place with him, right? So what are he's now QB 17 around ADP. Like you don't have to pay a lot for him. I'm buying him at that price all day, every day. Like I guarantee he will be QB2 on my team everywhere if he's sitting there QB 17. But because I'm taking him before that. What about you guys, Bob? Go ahead.
I am old and mean and cheap. I like my discounts. He is a discounted player. One of the first things you do, or I do after a season, is I start making lists of players who disappointed people who are going to be discounted. He's like near the top of that list of quarterback. Last year was not great. There's a lot of reasons for it. The injuries. By the way, he's a tough.
Yes,
he is. Not use foul language on this program, but you all know what I mean. He's tough as a nail, man. So like that about him as well. I think they'll work on the offensive line. That was an issue last year for sure. We'll see. I mean, did we upgrade the receiving core? I'm not entirely sure. I do like Brian Thomas Jr. I am not a Gabe Davis fan. But Christian Kirk and Evan Engram were there, so I'm not sure I care too much. Those guys will be dominant pieces, or at least get dominant target shares. And maybe Brian Thomas Jr., who is the guy I'm drafting later in drafts. He's someone I got stacks with Trevor Lawrence in many, many drafts. So I think he's going to be just fine. And seems like, like last year at this time, we were talking about him as an ascendant talent and an offense on the rise. We're not having that conversation this year, but I think we should.
Yeah.
I completely agree. The value is he was top 10. If you can tell me I can get a QB at QB 17 that last year was top 10 in pass attempts, air yards, rush attempts, rush yards, and rushing touchdowns at the QB position, sign me up all day. And Lawrence was last year, and he's been that every year that he's been in the league. So I think he has immense upside. People kind of forget he runs a good bit as well, which, we're talking about all these running QBs. Obviously, he's not to the Lamar Allen level, but he is going to run. And I kind of like them making Engram and Kirk the focal point of the passing game because they've been his most consistent wide receivers. And then I'm completely with Bob. I mean, Thomas could end up being the best wide receiver in this class. Seriously, like a lot of people that I trust and believe in, their ability to analyze these guys said from a talent perspective, he's as good as any of them. I'm betting on T-Law. I think this offense is being extremely undervalued in general, which we'll get into in a minute. But, I mean, across the board, ETN, like all these guys, Kirk, Engram, like they're all being undervalued. Lawrence as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I totally agree. There was just something about him and Ridley that, didn't click, and it just messed up. It just felt like there was something with that whole just duo there that just broke the chemistry of this offense from the year prior. And we know we had that. I mean, I was all in on that combo. Like I drafted Ridley everywhere. And week 1, I was like, yeah, baby. And then it's like, oh, holy crap, what just happened? I mean, Ridley pulled a Gabe Davis, man. He just disappeared certain games. It was just, and yeah, it just messed up everything. So I'm expecting a huge bounce back from Trevor Lawrence. And I think we'll be having a much different conversation about him next season.
Yeah,
AJ?
I'm right there with you as well. Agree with everything you guys have said. I like T-Law a lot this year. I think he's going to kind of pick up where he left off last year to start the season, start strong. New look, new attitude, sort of a deal. And yeah, I'm on board. So talking about one of the guys here, we talked about Ridley briefly, but now he's gone. Zay Jones also gone. So that's 200 vacated targets that are now up for grabs. And, Mr. Christian Kirk, the lone man standing in the receiver room, missed 5 games last year. So do we think Kirk is going to be, the guy? He was going as wide receiver 31 right now. So it feels like people are kind of off on him as well. Keith, where are you with Christian Kirk?
Like I said, I think all these main Jag guys are undervalued. Just look at it that Calvin Ridley last year saw 39% of the red zone targets. Zay Jones saw 25% of them. Evan Engram and Christian Kirk, the one thing they didn't really do last year was catch touchdowns or get red zone targets. I have to assume that's going to change this year, and they're still going to get the volume because we've seen now 2 years of Kirk with Lawrence. Like he gets peppered with targets. He has a lot of good games. I love that like wide receiver 30 range, like Terry McLaurin's there, Christian Kirk, guys that I am like scooping up everywhere I can. Again, I love all these Jaguars guys where they're going right now in these drafts. So absolutely, I'd jump on Kirk in a heartbeat.
All right, Bob.
I'll have shares of Kirk. I think that's the right price, maybe a little bit of value, and like thinking that the one guy on the outside, like Evan Ingram's probably going to have more of Evan Engram, and hope he figures out the end zone. But you could say the same for Kirk too. So like, I think those are the 2 assets I'm investing the most in. I do have an alarming number of Brian Thomas Jr. shares, probably to the point where I feel like I don't need any more, but there he is at the point in the draft where I'm going, well, I don't like anyone else, do I? So, hoping for the best with him. But I think to me, Kirk and Engram are the 2 guys that you're drafting in this receiving core.
All right, Joe.
No, that's pretty spot on. Kirk's the guy. He's the one you want, and you're not having to pay up for it. And he, in my opinion, could easily surpass it. I mean, you're drafting him at his floor already. I feel like there's no risk with that pick at all. I feel like there's only upside with it. So that's like the perfect value for him. But let's jump in here to Mr. Evan Engram, which Bob, you mentioned here. So Evan Engram, does anybody remember he led all tight ends in targets and receptions?
143.
And
He was 4th in targets in the entire league of pass catchers, wide receivers, and tight ends. 4th in targets. It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely crazy good year. Just didn't score touchdowns. And so fancy-wise, everybody's going like, oh, he's a bum still, right? Going as tight end 8. How are we not giving this guy more respect, Bob?
We are. I totally am. I totally agree with you. Like, gone are the days of Engram. There's another guy that, he's injury prone. He can't catch the football. Like, people get coached up. They get better. They focus more. All these things, the maturity, all those things could happen. Evan Engram, though, again, I'm chasing volume. And he's had that. 143 targets last year was like probably more than he'll get this year, but he had 95 or so, or close to 90, over 90 the year
98.
before. Yeah, 98. Mm-hmm. So like I'm pretty comfortable drafting him. Jumping a little ahead of ADP on him and drafting him with glee.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to have a lot of shares of Engram along with the lot of shares of T-Law that I want. This was just this is probably what some people thought maybe we'd see with Ridley coming back, and maybe to a slightly lesser degree, but 114 receptions was easily in Ridley's wheelhouse, but not last year, not with that relationship, I guess you want to call it. But I love Engram this year, so you guys said enough to sell me on something I was already sold on.
Yeah, pretty much. Keith, any I think you already said a little bit, but anything extra before we
just again that
move on
red
here
zone
to
targets? 25% Zay Jones, 39% Calvin Ridley. He only saw 15%. I think Ingram's got to go up. He's now their big target, and we saw how much he liked to go to Zay Jones in the red zone. I think Engram could have a really big year if he just catches 3-4 more touchdowns. He didn't even have to have the targets and receptions.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't score till week 13. It was so great. I had him on a team. It was like, just please score. You'd be so good. I mean, I had people think like, should you drop him? Should you drop him? And I'm like, how do you drop the guy who's leading the league in targets for tight ends? Like, no way. It's crazy how fantasy really messes with you sometimes. So all right.
Well, let's move on to the Tennessee Titans here and talk about Mr. Will Levis first. He's got a new head coach here in Brian Callahan, who was the Bengals' former offensive coordinator. Calvin Ridley jumps from Jacksonville up here to Tennessee. They brought in Tony Pollard. So will Levis be a fantasy relevant quarterback this year, Keith?
I mean, maybe. I don't want to say no, because I really do like what the Titans have done here. If you look at the receivers that they've now put around them, like you have Ridley, who is really good versus the zone. Hopkins is really good versus the man, kind of giving him an option with both. He's got 2 running backs that are both good in space and good pass catchers. I really like the tight end Okonkwo. I think that he's somebody, if Levis does step up this year, that could kind of be a breakout player at that position. But to be honest, I would rather have Bryce, who's kind of around the same value if I'm taking a second-year QB, who everybody's kind of down on. But I'm not going to say no that it'll be fantasy relevant, but I think it's too risky. And, again, I'd rather have Bryce Young if I'm taking a QB kind of in that range.
All right, what do you think, Bob?
That's probably been my view. Like if I'm get a QB3 in best ball, I'll take some shots. Maybe he has another 4 touchdown game in him. And I'll get a week out of him.
If he's playing the Falcons, Bob, he will.
Right. So, but yeah, beyond that, I think I'm kind of with Keith. If I'm taking a chance super late on a quarterback, I'm probably more interested in Bryce. I will say the Callahan that we should be interested in is Bill and not Brian. The offensive line is going to be better in Tennessee, and that'll make a difference. We'll see. Maybe Levis takes to a new offense, but I think while we're seeing, also the Titans will be seeing, because I don't think they know either. So I'd like in 2 quarterback leagues, super flex leagues, when I'm asleep at the wheel and I go, oh man, I didn't get a third quarterback. Oh, there's Will Levis. Okay, I mean that's my primary interest.
Yeah, he feels like more of a guy that you're gonna stream like a DFS type weekly play type thing. He's got the arm talent; it's phenomenal. Like that first week, man, it was like, oh my god, he could throw the ball. It was pretty, but he's so erratic. He's not super accurate, and that's really gonna hurt him in the long run. So unless there's just a lot of things that he worked on this offseason, and we know these guys are working, but unless I wouldn't say work on it, unless he fixes, I think, a lot of things this offseason.
We need a Josh Allen type progression, because Allen's very inaccurate. Yeah,
you kind of do.
We need more than that. And also, Treylon Burks put in a lot of work too. Look what it's done for him.
Oh, no kidding. We're talking about a guy I was wrong about. I was so high on Burks coming about. He has been the biggest bust ever.
I feel like I'm being kind of a jerk like that. Clearly, if you're Will Levis, your situation has changed for the better, notably, right? I mean, you've got a coach, in Callahan that brings in an offense that's had success with a young quarterback in the past, and you have some pieces around him, whether they all work out or not. I'm not as interested in the pieces around him. I don't like the prices of them so much. And but like when I'm targeting ambiguity, like a running back, like the Titans backfield, I want it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm overpaying. If I'm looking at the receiving core, I mean, the free square play, Tyler Boyd at least knows the offense. Maybe I'm going to have
That's the guy that I like. I'm with
probably
you.
more of him. And like a Conquo too. Like I look at him and I just think like, I've seen this movie before when it was called Juwan Johnson, or there's always these tight ends that we all love and never turn into a thing. And I like Chico Conquo is great. I've talked to who was it? Terry McCormick, who covers the team, pretty closely, and he said, yeah, this could be, he's got all he needs. Well, we know he's had all he needs. He's big, he's fast, he can catch the football. Right. Yet for some reason it never quite happens, and we all chase him into the double-digit rounds. And I don't know. I probably still have some shares, but I'm just, I think this is a better circumstance for Levis and the pieces around him. But still, I think it's going to be hard for me, given the pricing, to be super excited about any of them.
I learned the lesson with Ritter last year with that, though, right? Like they did that with Bijan and London and Pitts, and they got, him ready to go. And it's just Ritter was not that guy. And unfortunately, I think that's going to be Will Levis.
And I think that's where the Titans are. They've got to find out whether they got a Ritter or they need to go out and get a Cousins or something else.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
All right. What we got next?
All right.
This is an icky question right here.
Yeah. So we just talked about this a lot. So you can only pick one. Is it Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins?
Hopkins for me.
You must.
He's slightly cheaper. He's slightly cheaper. Right? Like I'll take the cheaper component here and feel like they probably have equal upside. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is done by any stretch. I mean, he's old, but so is Devontae Adams. I think he'll still have a pretty good year too. It's like maybe both these guys outproduce expectations and they're pretty good. I'm been a big, like one of my other soapbox issues is we let less than ideal quarterback play scare us off of really good wide receivers. And I don't want to do that. Even really good wide receiver, like, or lousy offenses. And I keep saying it, but like last year, Adam Thielen would like us to know you can be a wide receiver 18 playing with literally the worst quarterback in the NFL in the lowest scoring offense in the NFL and still have some value to a fantasy manager, right? So
Garrett Wilson has his hand up going, look what I did.
So I don't want to be totally dismissive of these guys. But again, like for one of the things when I'm mining bad offenses, I stay at the surface, right? Not drilling deep, staying at the top. Like if I'm looking at the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson, come on down. The rest of y'all get on with your bad selves. So I mean, and so I think that's kind of I feel like I'm not giving them the respect or not following my own advice when I say don't let bad quarterback situations or less than ideal quarterback situations scare you off really good players. I think DeAndre Hopkins is a really good player, but he's getting older. I think Calvin Ridley, the jury is still out. I think he could be a really good player, but seems like he's had a lot of time to prove it and it hasn't quite built that consistency I'm after yet.
Yeah, and Calvin Ridley's older than I thought he was.
He was old. When he got drafted, I was livid when we didn't take CD Lamb and we took him instead. Like just livid. I had
no idea that he was that old. Because you're right. He hasn't been in the league for as long as.
This is why I'm not a fan of teams. Not the least of which is Keith. I've already ranted on him once, so I won't rant on him anymore. But
it's okay. I'm used to
if you're a Titans fan, how mad are you that you wouldn't pay a young AJ Brown all the money he wanted? And here you are giving Calvin Ridley, 29 years old, who's kind of been hit or miss. All the money AJ Brown wanted, and you didn't want to pay him.
Burks for Brown, straight up. How's that feel? A couple of years later, probably not too good.
Feels great as an Eagles fan.
All right, I bet.
Ask John Robinson how it feels.
Yeah,
you can find him.
Oh man, I'm Hopkins just because of the price, but I mean, you're right. It's gonna be tough to have either one of these guys. There's gonna be probably more bad games than good with both of these guys. Like it's just gonna be, and like some of their good games are gonna be like 10 fantasy points. You're gonna be like, yeah, you got me double digits. Oh man.
Yeah, you're just gonna see the one in
They're
front.
gonna
Of
lack
to win.
that huge upside. I know Hopkins had he happened to score 3 of those touchdowns in that Will Levis blow up, first game. But like that was kind of it for him. Like last year, he had a couple other, pretty massive games, but you're gonna get like 2 or 3 of those maybe, and that's it. Ridley probably about the same. It's going to be tough with both of these guys. They're not going to be very consistent.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I'm just going to go Hopkins. You know what you're getting with him, and he's done it long enough that he's just going to be that boring. Okay, well, let's have it.
And you get him a whole round later. So yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly.
I do want to say that I know what they were doing, because if you look, Hopkins is elite versus man defenses. And so what we saw was defenses played a lot of zone versus Levis, which he really struggled with. So you bring in Ridley, who's a receiver who's great against zone. And so hopefully that's going to kind of free it up and get them to where teams are just not basically running the defense that Hopkins is going to torch. But it's still going to rely on Levis, like actually taking a step up. But I would definitely go with Hopkins even Ridley's best years, he didn't have the explosiveness and stuff that Hopkins does, even being 32 years old. He's going later, and he has, to me, a much higher ceiling.
Yeah. All right. So let's move it on here with the final question we have for the Titans, and that is Mr. Tony Pollard or Mr. Tyjae Spears in the backfield. Which one do we think is going to be the main guy? And are we just looking at running back by committee? Keith?
Unfortunately, because I am a huge Tyjae Spears fan, and I also think Tony Pollard is a really serviceable running back, I think it's going to be a split, and we're going to see one of those deals where they use both of them. You look how much Spears was used with Derrick Henry and the history that he had with Vrabel. Spears is going to be used, and I just don't understand why you go out and pay Pollard if you're not going to use him either. They're both good pass catching backs. They're both good in space, which again makes sense with, Levis's issues and trying to develop him. So I know that's not really an answer, but that's why I think Bob was getting to this point. They're both kind of, in my opinion, overvalued, especially in the sense that they're risky, right? Like it's really risky because, I think high end, maybe one of them gets 60% snap share, right? And it's probably more of a 50-50 deal. And I just don't know if that's enough in this offense for either one of them to be like a big time running back in fantasy.
Yeah. I think, if you're like looking at running backs in that range, and like I'll probably have shares of both of them, but maybe I'd rather just wait till later and get like a Blake Corum who the contingent value there is like an 80% workload share, right? And I don't know,
right.
But it's funny,
Lloyd, yeah,
or maybe, a player like that, right? Like, but also, I don't want to overstate. Like, it is possible there is a world in which Tony Pollard was limited for a good part of last season by the injury the year before, right? And also, like a couple years ago, the Cowboys running back coach Skip Peete, my old high school rival, I pounded him many times. Now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, running backs coach, but he told us the Cowboys viewed Tony Pollard as a guy who needed a limited snaps, not touches snaps, right? Like it was like 30 snaps is about all we want to give him because that's where he's at his best. We saw him used differently under Mike McCarthy, and it didn't work out. And maybe it's as much the plays they were asking him to run or the places they were asking him to run. One of the things I talked to Michael Gelkin from the Dallas Morning News, and he pointed out, and I thought it was really good. He did a bit of a study. The number of times that Tony Pollard hit his high end speed was like way down. Like, went from like about 5% of his runs to well under 2% of his runs. Just wasn't getting the breakaways. Was that because he wasn't healthy? Is it because of where he was being asked to run? Is it because he was being asked to run more than he needed to run? Maybe he's in a situation with a diminished workload or a true timeshare where we get a little addition by subtraction. This is possible. I don't know if I want to pay to find that experiment out. Maybe I will be shaking the hand of some league winner who pounds me over the head with Tony Pollard, and I will congratulate them and move on. But and maybe I'm totally overlooking Tyjae Spears for the same reason. It's almost like I have a blind spot for him, and I hate doing that. But there's players I like either before or after that are kind of filling the spots that those guys might otherwise occupy for me. I'm just drafting other positions or, in a different lane when they're going.
Yeah. Totally spot on there. I really want nothing to do with either one of them. I don't know how this is going to shake out. I think it's going to lean Pollard, but I don't think it's going to be too drastically in his favor. And I don't think it should be. I do think, we saw the yards per carry, his efficiency, Pollard's, the drop massively last year. And I do think it was workload related. I do think there was a little injury hangover from the year before that didn't help that as well. There's just a lot of dudes going rounds after him, and then a couple rounds after Spears that I think can be the same player. Like they might be the running back too. We might know that they're the running back too on their team, but they could get the same amount of workload, and you're paying, pennies on the dollar compared to Pollard for some of those guys, And so that's where I'm like, I'd much rather have some of these guys. If I had to pick one, I'm probably taking Spears just because he's cheaper. Like same answer as Hopkins. It's just like
especially in this economy.
Offense.
Kevin Tompkins out there, but like
there
the
you
guys,
go.
like look at some of the players that are going after both of them. Like I see, look at Tony
Kevin.
Pollard, and you're seeing Jalen Warren going after him, Zach Moss going after him. Javonte Williams going after him, or Brian Robinson Jr. going after him.
There's the guy. I love Robinson this year.
Right. And then I look at Tyjae Spears. I look at Devin Singletary. Got like I don't know if I expect Devin Singletary to be great, but I expect him to be really busy. And if I'm chasing volume,
No kidding.
Running back 34. Yes,
and he
please.
hasn't missed a game in like 4 years. So he's been
Right.
actually very durable, which you don't
Gus
think. He's got
Edwards.
experience with Debo.
Gus Edwards going about 4 rounds later. I'm probably going to take my chances there. Though I mean, there's a lot of guys. Ezekiel Elliott. Way later, I might even be more interested in Jerome Ford.
You could even get Zeke's backup, much later. Who, let's be real, like, would we at all be surprised if like somehow he takes over for Zeke because Zeke's just washed? No.
I'm not against having some exposure to these guys in best ball, but if I'm drafting like in a single, like if I'm shifting into redraft mode, I'm probably not targeting that ambiguity at that price.
No. Totally. So
Kevin Tompkins in this economy.
He's so funny, man. He cracks me up.
All right. So we like to finish up these division draft guides here with one question. And it is, who is your wild card player? And how we've been describing this is just the guy who sort of has the biggest difference-making outcome. The guy who could be a huge league winner to possible bust. And Bob, we will start with you.
If you're looking for someone who could be like the league winner or the bust, it's probably Stefon Diggs, right? I mean, he's a guy who could be Stefon Diggs still. Right. Yeah. And also could be horrible. I would like to say Jelani Woods because you guys were so disrespectful of him in the Colts segment.
Bob like this tight end 6'6" or taller. He gets it.
I do. And they're, but if they didn't have 4 of them in Indiana, I would probably be really keen on one of them. But I do think Diggs, the range of outcomes there, maybe he is that Stefon Diggs still. Maybe that blip on the radar last year, and he's going to demand the ball, not through his attitude, but through getting open on a regular basis, right? Maybe having those other pieces around him will be helpful that he hasn't had in the past. So, I think he's like the boom bust guy that might be the wild card. I wanted to say something about Travis Etienne too, because you're drafting him as running back 10 right now. He finished as running back 3 last year. There was a number I saw this week that you're talking about short area acceleration. His top, he was going 19.6 miles per hour across the line of scrimmage at one point last year. Think about that. The fastest speed in the NFL last year was 22.6 miles an hour. That was DK Metcalf on a 73-yard run, right? 19.5 miles an hour at the line of scrimmage. That's some serious.
He's hitting a turbo button or something there, Bob.
Yeah.
That's some serious acceleration. And we might, the volume has been impressive for him, better than we expect. I know they keep saying they want to lighten his load, yet they keep not lightening his load. Last year it was like 75% of the running back touches. So, like, good luck with that, Tank Bigsby. I'm not sure you're the guy that's going to be cutting into that workload. I think, like, I've never been a Travis Etienne guy, but I'm starting to come around a little bit. But I don't think he's a wild card. I think, Jelani Woods is the true wild card.
Volume plays. If you like Mixon, you got to like Etienne, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Keith, what do you think?
Your wild card player of
Bob literally took the words out of my mouth. Is Travis Etienne, who I think is an extreme value, just like all the Jags. The reason I think he's a wild card, though, and I stand by it, I don't know if at his size he's going to be able to continue taking this kind of workload like we just see with these running backs this size. If they get that many touches, it usually eventually wears down. And I was wrong about last year, and obviously if he does it again this year, I'm completely wrong, but it just scares me when you get kind of a smaller back and they're getting that kind of volume, especially on back-to-back years. And I know we laugh at Tank Bigsby, but he was a really good back coming out of college. And we talk about the tight ends and wide receivers taking a year or two to kind of get it going. We've seen this with running backs where their first year is kind of a disaster, and then they figure it out year two. So I am very interested to see but I'm picking up Travis Etienne everywhere I can because, again, what is it, running back 10, right, is his current ADP? And, I mean, I think at worst he'd be like running back 6 or 7 if he gets the volume and stays healthy this year in an offense that we all think is going to be better than, obviously the public expects.
Yeah, that's where I've got him ranked is number 7 right now. So there's a couple of guys who he finished ahead of who I think, give them full years. We expect Bijan to take a big leap this year with the new offense.
JT healthy.
So that kind of stuff plays into it, but he's still a little undervalued. There's a couple of guys that you're like, really? What? Like, all right, maybe pump the brakes on them a little bit. But AJ, who is yours?
Well, I was debating on going ETN, but I guess I don't need to talk about him here. I will just say I double tapped him as my RB2 after taking Barkley and Scott Fish.
I like those.
So
volume.
Yeah, exactly.
I got
That's
ETN
what I was thinking.
my RB1, right, AJ? I think.
Yeah, he's your one.
Yeah, that's who I got.
Yeah, I will go with Kirk here. I think that, again, since we had so many vacated targets there, some of those could end up with ETN. I think a decent chunk will end up with Brian Thomas, maybe a few and a cup of coffee to Duvernay. But I think Kirk is going to be the one to really step up here. And, the pressure's on him to do it, but I think there's just general pressure on this team in general. And again, with Ridley being gone now, I think this is, a new opening for him, a new opening for Lawrence again to kind of just rekindle, their own working relationship and just nail it down and really take off here.
So I'm going to finish off here, and I said it earlier, so not a whole lot more to say. Anthony Richardson's my big wild card player. I really do think he legit has QB1 upside, but injuries plague him again. NFL offenses really start figuring him out. We could see him slip down into, QB top end QB2 range, where the price you're paying for him right now is, QB5, QB6. And I know there are people in some leagues who love him enough to take him QB2, QB3. They just love that upside, and they're gonna go pay for it. I really think he could be a win or lose player for a lot of people. So, all right, that is it for the show. I want to thank you, Bob and Keith, for joining us tonight. It was great having you on. Before we let you go, though, I just want to give you both a chance to let everybody know where they can find you and what you got going on. Keith, we'll start with you.
You can find all of my stuff on Twitter /X. I still can't get used to that. At Keith Fleming, KeithFleming. Doing some golf work still for Fantasy Six Pack up until the football season. Had a really good first round at the Scottish Open. We've actually gave some winners for the tournaments the last couple of weeks. So hopefully we're going to end on a heater this golf season. We only got about 5-6 weeks left. And then, obviously getting ready for me and Joe Matz to get back to doing our DFS football show for Fantasy Six Pack in the fall, starting week 1. But a lot of great stuff on Fantasy Six Pack right now. You should check it out. And always enjoy getting to do a show with the great Bob Harris.
And Bob, what you got going on, man?
You can find me at Football Diehard on the X device. You can find me at Football Guys. My weekly fantasy notebook is free there. You don't have to pay. You can get that every Monday. Also check out the YouTube channel. You can find me on the Audible. We have 3 YouTube channels. Check them all out: the Fantasy Football channel, the Dynasty channel, and the Audible, where I get to hang out with the great Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammy, much to my glee. You can also find me at the Fantasy Football Expo next month, along with my good friend Bob Lung. But also be doing the Kling's Classic Drafts, having a good time there. So I hope to see everybody there at the Expo, having a good old time.
Yes.
Yeah. AJ
Looking
and I
forward
will be
to
there.
it.
Keith, I don't. You said you couldn't make it, right?
Not this year, yeah, but I'm definitely going next year for sure.
It's a good time. So, Bob, we will be seeing you there. I think I'm still in the online division for the King's Classics, but I'm there in person. I think a few other people are as well. So I'll hunker down at one of the tables in the back and watch you guys while I draft my team. All right, well, that is it. I want to thank the both of you for coming on, and we will have to do it again soon.
Thanks,
See you guys.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right, AJ. So that's it for the NFC or AFC South. Sorry, I apparently should not have done that show tonight. Who knows?
You were off your game.
AFC. I have no idea what's going on. The whole screen flickering apparently just threw me for a complete loop, and I'm done. So AFC West is next week on Thursday. We got Pat Fitzmaurice and Jordan Schultz returning or coming on this for that one. So that'll be a good show there, and that wraps up our AFC. But while you're still here, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave those comments, and go subscribe to Fantasy Six Pack. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.